Welcome to another episode of repairs to this poor old Triumph 2500 Mark 1. And in today's episode we're going to continue to work on it with the aim of getting the motor out. Now the motor's going to come out down onto the ground onto a couple of trolleys and hopefully wheel it out from underneath it. And then maybe I'll get as far as putting it onto an engine stand. Who knows? So let's get on with it. Well, it's another day and it's time to pull a few more things off in preparation for getting this engine out. So I think get the tail shaft, get some of the under the car stuff done first. I don't think the engine will come out today. I've still got too much to pull out. And after yesterday, the old back and the old knees and the old every bloody thing is giving me a bit of grief. So it's going to be shorter days. Anyway, let's get on with it. Well, here we are, down under the Triumph 2500 to get this tail shaft off, just to get it out of the way so I can get on with this job. Oh my goodness, I seem to remember. There you go. Never remember which way to turn these bloody nuts. Tell you what, I'm well past my use by date when it comes to doing this stuff. My goodness. Yeah, there won't be much more once this big rebuild's done on this car. Hopefully that'll then see me out for most major repairs. I only have to maintain it. And still got hopes of being able to finish the dolly and the 7 off, but yeah, my days of doing this endlessly have come to an end, I think. Yeah, now all you young grasshoppers out there, if there's anything I can say, it's do what you can while you can, because it's hard to accept as you get older that yeah, stuff like this you've done maybe all your life, car stuff, motorsport, that it gets to a point where you can't do it no more, and it's one of those things that it's a bit hard to accept, to be honest. And of course, yeah, it's all well and good to go that you're determined and want to do this, but at the end of the day, doesn't matter how much bloody determination you got, if you can't bloody do it, you can't bloody do it. There's so much to do to this car. It's and of course a lot of it maybe doesn't need to be done, but in as much as, well, some of it does. The exhaust has had a dodgy repair, and it's really not much good, and I'm toying, depending on how much I can find someone to do it, I'm putting a whole new system on it, from the extractors through, help it breathe better. Oh yeah, the other thing I'm just seeing here, this rear sway bar is, I knew I had to take it off because it took a hit. Oh, stupid bloody GoPro camera. It took a hit and there's a bracket bent back there. I don't know whether it will straighten out or not. It might break if I straighten it, but I have to fix it anyway. But the rubber bushes here are completely perished from oil contamination. I'll try and buy some nylethane ones, but it's a fairly thin sway bar on the back of these things, and I don't know. Can sometimes have trouble buying that sort of stuff. Holy shit. Well, that's the tail shafts off. Speedo drive's disconnected, and I had to take some of the brackets off that hold the sump guard on. The sump guard bracketing is going to have to be all redesigned a little bit, because the cross member here that holds the steering rack on, just here, is not going to work with the power steering cross member. So I'll have to redesign the bracketing that holds the sump guard on. Oh joy. Now this is a Selby sway bar, as is the one on the back. So this is a product of the 60s, yeah, 60s. And the rear one's quite well done, but the front one has a little bit side of the road engineering. There's this bracketing here that sort of sandwiches this sort of cross member here, and it works. It's been on this car for 30 years, but it's very agricultural, so I'm going to take the opportunity, once this is all apart and I have that off, of welding this plate here to this cross member. I might gusset it up here to give it a bit more strength, and there's nothing on top of this, so I might weld a plate along the top of that to give that cross member a bit more strength, and that will make the whole thing so much easier to do and look better. At the other end here, at the where it goes on the suspension, again it's sandwiched around the lower control arm. I'll have a talk to the welder on that one to make sure he thinks he can weld that without heating up the lower control arm and weakening it in any way. I don't think that's going to be the case, so I might get that welded on as well, instead of the sandwich together sort of thing that it is. I know it's a bit late in time to be all that worried about making improvements now, sort of 30 years down the track. You know, how much time is left in me or this car, but anyway, it'll keep me happy, so let's do it, eh? So let's get this sway bar off. Now, because the it's going to have power steering on it, this sort of cross member here is going to be different, and also this sort of bar that comes down here and the tie rod goes on, that's all different too. So that needs to be undone and taken off. And seeing this cross member is coming off, it will all come off in one piece. The downside of dropping the engine out downwards is there's a lot more work to do, a lot more things to take off. I've done it both ways, engine out through the top, engine out down the bottom. The times I've taken it out the bottom have generally been in the process of some sort of major rebuild anyway, and the whole front end was out, so it was the easier way to do it. I'm doing it this way at the moment because I'm pretty well by myself, and taking it out through the top, you've got a gearbox on and everything, you've got this great big angle to get it to go in, you know, and it's really a two-person job, and it's pretty dodgy with the whole thing way up high to get it in, and so I'm taking it out the bottom, but to do that is a lot more work. But the facts of life are the cross member's got to come off to put the power steering on anyway, so all this would have had to happen, so it's really, you know, might as well do it this way. It's just you've got more to undo. Some things, like this bolt that I'm about to undo, if I had the right spanner, is one that can rust in there. I've had that happen on a different Mark 1, and oh my goodness, what a nightmare. So let's hope these ones are alright. Well, next job is getting the front cross member off. Now, the cross member also holds the lower control arms of the suspension, and where the bolt goes through that cross member, it goes through a nylethane bush with a sleeve in there, and those sleeves seem to always corrode themselves to the bolt, and you can't get the bolt out. The bolt turns because the bush is turning inside the nylethane. So the only way to get them out is to take a grinder to them and grind the head of the bolt off and the bolt off, and spread the cross member a bit, and get them out. Then you've got to get the bush out of the control arm. All a bit of a hassle. They haven't been out for a very long time, so I'll have to put new bushes in there, and when I buy new bolts, I'll buy those fancy bolts that iodized or whatever they call it, but the facts of life are I'll probably never pull this car apart again in this part of the car, and so it doesn't really matter to me. You know, the next person can worry about it. But I will put new bushes in it. I'm not sure if the bush, the last ones I seen were like whatever they call that, where they treat the steel. But it's a hostile environment down there. I'm not sure whether that'll hold up either. But anyway, at the end of the day, because the cross member, that one's not going back in the car because I'm putting power steering in. It's a different cross member. To start off with, I'm going to take the rack out, only because it makes it a bit easier to do. You can take the whole thing out if you want, but I'm trying to do things the easy way, even though it means more work. So let's get on with it. Alright, first thing to do is to undo the steering column that goes down to the rack. Now, I've never been keen on power steering. My old man had another Mark 1 Triumph. It was power steered. It didn't have the same feel that this car had with its manual steering. And I always preferred this one. The problem is I'm not getting any younger, and the steering is steering in these things is heavy. It's fine driving it as a car that you use for car events, and you're driving in country roads and cruising around and all that sort of thing. But as a car that you drive as transport, and parking it and all that, it gets a bit tiresome. And even though I've now got another modern car to replace the Toyota, and therefore the pressure's off to use that for this sort of thing, I still sort of decided to put power steering in it, sacrifice a little bit of sort of feel for I hate that word, practical. You're right. Can't be helped. Breaking these ball joints on these things is a matter of hitting it in the right spot. And on a TR7, I think the dolly as well, it's reasonably easy. This car's a little bit harder to do, particularly by yourself.
Tell me when.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
That all?
That's all.
Oh, okay. That wasn't hard.
I said it before. Yeah. That Toyota I had, Sleeker GT4. I did some work on its suspension when I first got it. And stuff like this, you undone the nut. Well, firstly, the nut had a little tag on, welded on it, which meant you only needed one spanner, because that little tag would hit somewhere on wherever you were. And you undone it, and then you pulled the bolt out. And that was in suspension components, all over the front suspension, rear suspension. On a Triumph, everything seems to be under that little bit of load. And none of the bolts want to come out. You got to wind the buggers out, you got to bang them out, and then getting them back in, of course, is also one of life's great adventures. Alrighty then, it's time to get this subframe off, or cross member, whatever you want to call it. It's held on with 8 bolts. I don't expect to be that hard to get off. I think there's a couple, oh no, I think they're all pretty doable. Well, now we should get some action. Well, this is the cross member. It's upside down to how it would be in the car, and this is a lower control arm here, and this bolt here is rusted to a sleeve that's inside this nylon bush. Now, I've hit it a few times here with a hammer, and it's going nowhere. I'm just going to try putting it in a vise, pushing on here, and see if it'll push out. Otherwise, it's a grinder job. Well, it's working. Maybe it'll go the rest of the way by hitting it out. By gum. Well, I'm not a big fan of grinders, but one side of the lower control arm came out of the cross member, but the other side won't come out by putting it in a press. I put it in, not a press, a vise. I put it in this hefty heavy duty vise I have, and it's not doing anything. So it's grinder time, and that won't be fun. Well, there it is, out. Need a new bush, a new bolt, but anyway. Now this is here is what I'm talking about in relation to the front sway bar and how agricultural this whole thing is. That is just sort of bolted on as a clamp arrangement. It's the same setup as where the sway bar goes across where the cross member is. So my thinking is I'll have this part here welded and do away with the bolts and all the other daggy stuff, and the same on the cross member. Cross member doesn't worry me at all. This is a bit of a suspension and heat, so I have to talk to the welder. But having said that, down on the other part of the suspension that bolts here, comes sort of here, they're prone to cracking, and so on this car they've already been strengthened by adding metal and welding it on, so, and that's a lot thinner metal, more susceptible to heat sort of thing than this great hunk of steel. I wonder if that bush will come out now. Well, that's everything pulled off, everything's done, ready to lower the engine down onto the ground, well, onto a trolley. It's I know from past experience that the car won't be high enough, and you then need to put the engine hoist on and lift the car a few inches just to drag the engine out from under the car. Always feels a bit dodgy doing it, but it's always been fine in the past. Put a few more axle stands under there just to be sure. And but that's a job for tomorrow. The time has come, the walrus said, to speak of many things. Well, not really, but it's time to get this engine out of this car. Now, it's not going to be as easy as I'd hoped. I have done it this way before, but well, I can see potential for problems. But anyway, we'll give it a go and see what happens. So let's get on with it. Oh well, let's get this cross member back here undone. The engine hoist is holding the engine, and there's a jack also under the gearbox, so with a bit of luck we'll be able to undo this. I might leave one. Oh, I got the wrong spanner again. I would have swore that was ½ inch. Well, I forgot to turn the camera on for the lowering of the engine onto the ground. Sorry about that, Chief. So anyway, now we're in trouble in terms of getting the engine out from under the car. The car's too low. We'll have to hoist it up, but then the hoist legs are going to be in the way, I think. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge to do what we're trying to do here, but we'll give it a go and see what happens. So let's get on with it. I'm going to put some extra axle stands under the car in case something goes wrong. And I'm not going to be getting under there either. As I inspected the cross members hitting on the hoist legs, so it won't come all the way out. I thought I was being smart using the lowest trolley I've got under the engine and the higher one under the gearbox, because I thought it'd be harder to get the car up high enough, and that's now my problem, because if the trolleys was reversed, the subframe, the cross member would be high enough to come over the top of the... Anyway, let's deal with the problem. Well, here's the old engine and gearbox out of the car. It's very oily. Now, I'm sort of looking at this and thinking, well, most of the oil, believe it or not, seems to be coming out the filler cap, running down those veins and then down the back of the engine and then making all that mess. Now, why would it take the, why wouldn't it take the least sort of resistance and go out that breather into the catch tank instead of having to push past the seal that's in this cap? Oh, I don't know. Sometimes cars are a real mystery. Now, if I didn't know better, you could say the back of the tapper cover gasket. But that's one of these nice new Fangdol plastic ones. And I reckon that's pretty well sealed up there. Anyway, that's the engine out. And next job will be to take the gearbox off and all the other doodahs that aren't required on the engine, and get it on an engine stand. Now the problem with the engine stand is yeah, I'm not sure it's strong enough. Well, here's the engine bay, pretty well a mess in there as well. As you would expect with an old car that leaks oil. Didn't look too bad before I took the engine out, but needs a good clean. Down the tunnel there needs a good clean. Other than that, that's the engine bay with no engine. Yes, I am a bit concerned about putting this engine on my engine stand. It's sort of, I'm not sure what it's rated to. It hasn't got any sort of thing on it to tell me. When a dolly engine's on it, it's alright, even though it does seem a bit sort of I'm actually thinking I'll take the head off this engine, and obviously the gearbox and everything else, and I think just the engine without the head will probably be alright. And then when I put it all back together, I'll do the same. I'll take it off the stand before I put the head on it. I think that might be the best course of action. Anyway, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of repairs to this poor old Triumph 2500 Mark 1. Tune in, same duck time, same duck channel, for more mechanical mayhem on this poor old Triumph, when you'll see me pull the gearbox off and all the other doodahs and get the engine on an engine stand. Bye for now.